The respiratory system. Respiration refers to the set of mechanisms by which cells carry out gas exchange with the external environment. The respiratory system supplies the cells with the O2 they need and removes the CO2 they produce. The respiratory system consists of a group of organs that extend from the openings in the face, mouth and nose, to the pulmonary alveoli via a series of branching passages. Anatomy of the respiratory system. The respiratory system is divided into two parts: the airways or respiratory tract. The lungs. The airways are in turn divided into two parts: upper respiratory tract, URT, comprising the orifices, the nasal cavities and the mouth, the pharynx and the larynx. Lower airways, LOR, comprising the trachea and the bronchi, which arise from the division of the trachea and branch out. The lungs contain alveolar sacs, which group alveoli together in clusters and are in close contact with the pulmonary capillaries to facilitate gas exchange. Since gas exchange with the blood takes place solely in the alveoli, the other structures of the respiratory system are, in fact, merely conduits that allow air to enter the lungs. These airways also perform another function, namely the filtration, humidification, and warming of the air we breathe. The organs of the respiratory system. 1. The nose. It is the only part of the respiratory system that is visible from the outside. Air enters through the nostrils, which are separated by the nasal septum. The nasal mucosa is underlain by a dense network of thin-walled veins, which warm the air as it passes through. 2. The pharynx. It is a funnel-shaped muscular structure, 13 centimeters long, commonly known as the throat. It is the passage through which air and food pass. The pharynx comprises three parts: nasopharynx, situated opposite the nasal opening; oropharynx, connected to the oral cavity; hypopharynx, laryngopharynx, extending forwards into the larynx and backwards into the esophagus. 4. The larynx. The larynx. It directs the flow of air and food into their respective passages and plays a role in phonation. It is situated below the pharynx. It is an opening formed by a group of ligaments, cartilages, and a complete cartilaginous ring, the cricoid bone. Among the cartilages of the larynx is an elastic, spoon-shaped cartilage called the epiglottis. The epiglottis directs air towards the larynx and food towards the esophagus. Food enters through the mouth and then travels along a shared pathway with air, the oropharynx and hypopharynx. During swallowing, the epiglottis covers the larynx like a flap and directs food towards the esophagus at the back. Part of the lining of the larynx consists of a pair of folds, the vocal cords or vocal folds, which vibrate and produce sounds when air is blown past them. 5. The tracheal tube. The air passing through the larynx then enters the trachea. It is between 10 and 12 centimeters long and extends down to the fifth thoracic vertebra, in the middle of the thorax. It is lined with a ciliate mucous membrane. The cilia in this mucous membrane continuously propel the dust-laden mucus in the opposite direction to the inhaled air, towards the pharynx, where it is swallowed or coughed up. The walls of the trachea are surrounded by horseshoe-shaped cartilage rings, which give it a certain degree of rigidity. 5. The bronchial tubes. The trachea divides into two bronchi, the right and the left. Each one runs obliquely before entering the hilum of a lung. The right main bronchus is wider, shorter and more vertical than the left, which is why inhaled foreign bodies usually become lodged there. When air reaches the bronchi, it is warmed and most of the impurities are removed from it. Once the bronchi enter the hilum of the lungs, they begin to branch into smaller branches that lead directly to the alveoli. The main bronchi branch into secondary and then tertiary bronchi, eventually becoming the smallest airways, the bronchioles. Together, these form the bronchial tree. In fact, the bronchial tree comprises 23 levels of branching between the trachea and the alveoli, the trachea being level 0 and the alveoli level 23, dividing the tree into two zones. Conduction zone. It extends from the trachea down to the 16th generation, terminal bronchioles. In this area, there is no connection to the alveoli and therefore no gas exchange. Respiratory zone or exchange zone starts from the 17th generation and continues to the cells. This area is characterized by the gradual appearance of alveoli over successive generations. This is the area where gas exchange takes place between the alveoli and the blood. The respiratory zone consists of respiratory bronchioles, honeycomb ducts, honeycomb bags. The alveoli, this is where gas exchange takes place. Pleura, a membrane consisting of two layers. Parietal, which lines the chest wall. Visceral, which lines the lung. It extends into the pulmonary fissures. Between the two pleural layers lies the pleural cavity. Physiology of respiration. The main function of the respiratory system is to supply the body with oxygen and remove carbon dioxide from it. 4 processes involved in breathing must take place for breathing to occur. 1. Pulmonary ventilation. Air must flow in and out of the lungs so that the gases in the pulmonary alveoli are constantly being renewed. This process of pulmonary ventilation is commonly known as breathing. 2. External respiration. Gas exchange, the uptake of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide, must take place between the pulmonary capillaries and the pulmonary alveoli. 3. Transport of respiratory gases. Oxygen enters the lungs and enters the bloodstream to reach the cells. Carbon dioxide is released from cells and tissues, enters the bloodstream, and is transported to the lungs, where it is exhaled. 4. Internal breathing. Gas exchange between the blood and tissue cells must take place in the capillaries. The mechanics of breathing. Breathing consists of 2 phases, inhalation and exhalation. 1. Inspiration. This is an active phase, 70% of which is carried out by the diaphragm. Air enters the lungs. The diaphragm contracts and moves downwards. The thoracic cavity lengthens and the thorax expands. 2. Exhalation. This is a passive phase. The expiratory muscles work. During forced exhalation, the chest muscles relax. The chest returns to its resting position. Air is gently expelled from the lungs.